Well, what's up, everybody? I am very excited because I have my friend Maria Pendolino here, and Maria famously told me that she cries at anything. So I decided let's make her cry by featuring video game music. Now, in general, though, you would say that you're not a gamer by any stretch of the imagination.
I am not a gamer. My video game player career ended with me not being able to save the princess or complete the game in Mario 3 on the original Nintendo system. So that puts me squarely as a child of the 80s and 90s. I, learned how to warp in Mario 1 to save the princess. I skipped Mario 2 like many people did because the turnips just freaked me out.
Yeah.
And then I could not succeed with my little raccoon tail in Mario 3. And that's really where my gaming career ends. I flirted with Rad Racer and Paperboy, maybe, but truly only on the original NES system that required the blowing in the cartridge, banging on the top.
Yeah.
I have just like a awareness of video games through my husband, who's a major gamer. Obviously, as a voice actor, I love auditioning for video games, so I've watched a lot of gameplay on YouTube.
Yeah.
To try and get like the tone of a game, the vibe of what maybe a game studio had previously put out. So I've consumed video game media, but no, I'm definitely not a person who's sitting down and playing the games of today.
So you never cried to a video game before? Okay.
I have never, not that I remember.
When did you discover that you cry very easily?
Oh, I cry at everything. I think I've cried at commercials. So, especially around like the holidays when brands are really trying to tug on your heartstrings and tell you these, complicated familial stories in 30 or 45 seconds.
Yeah.
They get me every time. I cry at multicam sitcoms, films for sure. If it is a romantic comedy or something that has some element of kind of like trying to grab that emotion at the end. Like I'm the person in the movie theater just like wiping snot on my sleeves, trying to make it through. I'm a very empathic person. Like I feel very deeply. You can ask my husband, like sometimes I will cry over roadkill that we drive by. Like it hits me quickly. I cry easily. And then I would say I am just like especially like emotionally connected to just music in general. So I grew up as a singer and instrumentalist. I play the string bass, the violin. I played the cello for a couple years. I played the piano. So if a piece of music can make it through the skin and connect to the emotions, I have cried at the symphony. I have cried at the, opening or act 2 opening of a Broadway show. Yeah. Music has the ability to make my hair on my arms stand on end. And I feel like I really am able to interpret and intuit what a composer was trying to get across from an emotional standpoint, maybe more than the average bear. Or I just will start crying, and even though they didn't intend it to be a really emotional moment, I'm just
like a hard rock piece.
Yeah.
Well, perfect then. I asked the community a long time ago for a bunch of recommendations, so I have a ton of tracks so this will be a very hopefully cathartic evening or afternoon, or worse, it'll just be depressing as hell. So
or all of those things combined.
All of the above. So first up we're going to listen to is For Those Who Have Come Before. It's by Vincent Diamante, and this is from Sky Children of Light. Ooh.
That is a really beautiful piece of music. And I will say that this one almost got me. At the very beginning, I was thinking about the title, For Those Who Have Come Before. Mm-hmm. So that immediately connected me to this idea of, maybe people who are ancestors looking down on you, people who are waiting to greet you at Heaven's Gate or Nirvana or some afterlife, if you believe in that, or if you believe in reincarnation, like the idea that someone has gone on this journey before you. So just the title, gave me kind of like a given circumstances to live within. And I will say at the beginning, when it was more simplistic and you have those like very simple piano chords entering, it almost, if I closed my eyes, it was almost like I could see someone who had left this current plane of existence and they were taking their first few steps into a place that exists beyond this plane of existence, whatever that is. And see, now I'm getting emotional talking about it. This idea that they're like waiting for you and they're there. And you're not alone. Yeah. So at that very beginning, see, I told you, it doesn't take much.
I'm glad it's you, not me.
I felt that very like simplistic, like individual, and I think that was, the music was stark at that moment, and it felt like there was like a singular entity. When the strings came in and there were those moments of harmony, like, to me, if that's the transition point of like whatever that entity or whatever is that started at the beginning that was just a little bit tentative, was a little bit unsure, now suddenly was joined by something, someone, someplace, whatever, where there was a little bit more like understanding and confidence. Yeah. But if it had continued, a little bit longer with that kind of like tentative, contemplative place, I think you would have seen the tear come, because I was really close. And you can see how easily I was able to connect it to something that makes me emotional.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really, that's the power of music itself and this ability. And I think sometimes it's interesting because there's so many different angles to talk about music, or really anything that has like such an intensive sort of background. But, we can look at it from a compositional lens, or we can look at it from an emotional lens. And both, no composer, well, no, that's not true. Some composers are not writing with emotion in mind, but it's amazing how when we really put together the compositional style and compositional like insight mixed in with emotion, it's an amazing thing to create a piece that's so I think honest and really heartfelt. It's very easy to like be distracted by gameplay and by the experience in front of them, and like being able to sit down and listen. You don't have to know technical jargon in order to like feel. And I think ultimately any composer worth their spit, or is that the worth their spit? Worth their I don't remember what that phrase is. It doesn't matter. Will want someone to feel, something. And it's amazing too that like you and I have never played this game. I don't even know what it looks like, but both of us, we're thinking about imagery and I was thinking about seeing someone I love, you know what I mean? Like, and what it would mean to be reunited with that family. But yours, it's interesting. Two different perspectives, but equally both valid. But it was very touching. Well, let's keep this happy train a chugging, and
let's try more.
Let's listen to this one. Should get you. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't want to set it up, but because this one's gotten me before. But okay. We cry about different things, obviously. Just Italian criers. That's a hyperlink. This is 14.3 billion years from this game called The Outer Wilds, which this I played, and it's funny because the context was powerful in this moment, but I got more choked up and more emotional out of context, which is wild.
That is another beautiful piece of music. It almost got me again. It had almost the strumming, like guitar or mandolin or banjo kind of sound. That to me had kind of this like journey aspect to it. Like we're traveling, we're moving. And then when that first musical theme started to fade and we had the simple chords that were coming through on what sounded like kind of like an electric piano, those simple chords with kind of like the strumming like fading out, that's where I almost lost it. So it was this idea of kind of this transitioning happening. And I'm a sucker for cello acting as a voice. So where the cello is doing kind of like the storytelling. So the cello came in painfully almost a little bit.
Yeah.
And then where I felt like I personally lost my connection to the emotion was in the next transition where we had kind of like the sound of the cymbals, kind of coming in that, it had almost like a electric-y fuzzy quality to it a little bit with like the like moving through. And that's where I kind of like came back to reality. But had it stayed in that kind of like contemplative chord space a little bit, I think I would have cried. I really liked the transition in the storytelling. And again, like having absolutely no context of like the game or like where this appears in the game. To me, it was like almost the ending kind of felt like a rebirth. So like we've gone through the fire and like we've come back to the like
that's correct.
to like a new start. So tell me that I'm like completely wrong compared to what this
No, you're completely right. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it, but you're completely right.
All right. The music's doing its job.
The clues are in there, yeah. It's a really powerful piece, isn't it? I think the middle section represents space. I think it represents like, adventure exploration. So this game is all about space travel, and it's one of those like once in a lifetime games that it's essentially a giant puzzle that once you know the answers to it, it doesn't really work the same way. You know what I mean? It's interesting. No, you're right on the money without spoiling it too much for those that are watching. And also too, I find that the organic instruments, and the sort of the banjo and the violins and the cello and the piano and that sort of soft contemplative thing is very, very intimate and very, very personal, and it's almost like a reflective part of the journey, as it were. Oh god, this sucks. Why are we doing this?
This is such a great idea.
What a great time. This might be weird. Maybe you'll cry at this. This is Mick Gordon, the Partisan from Wolfenstein: The Old Blood.
When they poured across the border, I was cautioned to surrender. This I could not do. I took my gun and I vanished. I have changed my name so often. I've lost my wife and children, but I have many friends, and some of them are with me. An old woman gave us shelter, kept us hidden in the garret. Then the soldiers came. She died without a whisper. There were 3 of us this morning. I'm the only one to see leave me, but I must go on. The frontiers are my prison. Oh, the wind is blowing through the graves. The wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then will come from the shadows. Oh, the wind is blowing through the graves. The wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then will come from the shadows.
Wow.
I mean, just another amazing piece of music with so much to say.
Yeah.
Like the emotional journey that goes on in 6 minutes is remarkable. I would love to hear that song performed in like a concert hall and like just hear it in like the most amazing acoustic space with a singer who's got those low notes just like just resonating. I felt the most emotional during that piece when it was the very first transition from the vocalist to like just the very light chord progressions, just like the very kind of like hesitant chords. That's when I kind of got the most, that's where I got the closest, I think, to feeling like emotional, because it was such a different and like jarring transition from like this, you know, bass heavy vocalist to just kind of this lightness. The other part, I mean, I really loved the whole thing. I could add that to like my classical music playlist and be really happy to have it as something that comes up in my, you know, daily life to listen to. I thought the use of, you know, a more popular music sensibility percussion, you know, I don't know if that like crosses all the way into like a very like heavy metal or hard rock kind of like driving percussion aspect with a raging like bass line as well. I thought that juxtaposition with the strings, I really do love when you've got just kind of like a really hard mash of like what is considered like a traditional genre and having them like come together in that way. I also thought the very end, where you have kind of the lower toned instruments in a unison or in that same kind of thematic space, and then ending on what I'm assuming or thinking is a bowed string bass, open string, just like ending. I mean, that hits me even deeper as a bass player, being able to have the last note of a friggin' song, because we get a whole lot of nothing usually. But that was just a very beautiful and stark choice for a song that had so much of other stuff going on throughout its different sections. I have no idea what this one is about. This one did not paint a whole picture for me, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a real emotional heaviness to this that I found very visceral. I mean, all these tracks have been sort of emotional, but it was interesting because the lyrics and the story and the fact that Tex Perkins here, when he's singing and going up into the upper register, there's this like real sort of cry, which is something that, you know, from the opera perspective, we do that all the time, this sort of piangendo thing where it's, especially when you go up in the upper register, there's a lot of that shouting and stuff. But something that really crossed my mind while listening to this, and I'd never heard it as well, is obviously the storytelling here. And it made me think two things. One, it made me think like the feeling of losing both your parents or being alone in the world, and like the wind between the graves, and that sense of loneliness. Like, I remember I interacted with a man who had lost both of parents, and he was so angry all the time and frustrated. When my dad died, I sort of started to understand what that could feel like, because to lose both of your supports or your family, like brothers, sisters, whoever, right? To lose someone who you really like, we lose people, and then it's almost like the cornerstones that make us feel safe or make us still like carry some of our childhood. It feels almost like, if we're lucky enough to grow up and have a healthy childhood and stuff, like I almost feel like that feeling kind of came across to me in this song, like that sheer loneliness. That actually like was startling, because there are plenty of times where I'm like, oh my God, like, I mean, you know, as you get older, I mean, I'm almost 37, and it's, you know, I know that there's a lot of life ahead. Maybe we were watching Jaws the other day, and this is a weird tangent, but the young kid, the boy who's like the young kid. Have you ever seen Jaws?
Yeah. He
died at 37 of a heart attack, and you know, I'm just 37. Like, when this comes out, it'll be probably a couple weeks since I've turned 37, and that feels weird. And like when my dad died, I was like, wow, what is the point, like, of being around when someone you love so much is no longer there? Like, what, you know, and then you have to like sort of, and this is apparently, speaking with my hospice counselor, she was like, that's a very normal experience when you lose someone you're deeply close to. Is like, it's weird. But then on the flip side, I also felt a sense of anger in this that came through a lot, and a sense of not knowing where to place it. And both of those emotions that I heard in this made me feel very, very, very just sad. And I have no idea what the context is. And who knows? I mean, Wolfenstein, obviously, we're talking about like if the Nazis had won, World War II and the future is there are Nazis in the future and stuff. So like, and then I think there are people that fight against that. And I don't really know the full details of the story, but it hit in a weird spot, not in a crying spot, but like in a visceral, like humanity spot, which is interesting.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I mean, there's a lot of, packed into that 6.5 minutes, there's a lot of story, in just, what the vocalist shares and tells us, but also what we intuit from the various transitions. It's a very powerful piece of music. Very well done, I would say.
Let's listen to Are You Coming Home, Love, Mom from World of Goo.
Shit. This is going to be the one. I can tell you right now from that friggin' title. This is going to be the one. Oh, no. This one has me right on the razor's edge. Like, they're close. Like, they're not quite, like, rolling down my face, but I can feel the moisture in the corner of my eyes. This one, again, having absolutely no context. This one, for some reason, took me to losing a pet.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So, as you know, as my friend, I have 4 cats. And I have owned cats throughout my lifetime. And whatever it is about this one just made me think of my poor little cat when I was a kid, who we had to put to sleep. And, like, just this, like, idea that you've done wrong by them in some way. And that there was nothing else that you could have tried or done or whatever. And just that feeling of guilt that stays with you forever. Even though there was nothing you could have done. But that feeling that you just didn't do or try enough. And for whatever reason, I think it was probably the chorus of voices, the very kind of like angelic choir throughout that. For those, 3 minutes and whatever, 30 seconds, I spent the entirety thinking about the various pets that I've had. I don't know, it's like we do this most compassionate thing for the animals in our life, and we like help them move on to a place where there isn't pain or suffering or anything like that. And this whole track just had me like thinking in that space where we are just being so unbelievably like we're making this an impossible choice for something that we love very, very deeply, which I'm sure has absolutely nothing to do with what this game is about. But this one got me.
A couple things musically that really stand out to me, and this is the third time I've heard this, but one of them is of course, the sort of hummed or open-throated, open-mouthed hum, ooh and ah.
Yeah.
I think like humming and open-mouthed humming is so... and vowels themselves, I, E, O, U, for those of you that don't know vowels, hopefully you know what vowels are. We experience them in music in such they're so simple and so human, and there's something about a hum, like a mother's like hum. I mean, your grandparents hum, someone hums, and like, it transports us in a way that I think it's very, very raw.
Yeah, it's a comforting, like, not only a sound but a vibration too. Like, you can feel it.
Yeah,
you can almost feel like if you were like laying against like your mother or your grandparents' like chest, and they're just kind of like humming you to sleep. You have not only the comfort of their familiar voice and sound like coming around you, but you also have that like vibration, like right here on the sternum, like being able to like almost feel that too.
Well, and to your point about pets, I mean, God, I wish. I mean, that's hard, and I think too. I wonder if the reason why it feels that way too is that there's a little bit of the chord. It's weird because it's a bit of a melancholy, almost anguishing chord rather than like a peaceful or somber or reflective piece. It feels very much like a responsibility is in that sound. And again, I mean, we don't know the content, we're just like pontificating over it, but that again, this is the mighty power of music. I mean, gosh, yeah, when you put it like that, I mean, that hurts really bad. That's like a real unhappy place to be in, because it does, I mean, it does feel like the weight of being responsible for something.
I felt an aspect of guilt or regret or remorsefulness in that music, whether or not someone did something or didn't do something. I don't know. Maybe there was an apology in there. Like, I felt that. I felt all of that. So again, no idea if that has any relevance whatsoever to what's happening in the game at that moment, but just, I felt someone's anguish for wishing something had gone a different way. I think that's the most concise way that I can say it.
You know what's funny about like not to keep this being depressing, but in a like post like dad world, it's really interesting how after like a year and a half of like grief counseling and stuff, the thing that it's the most random stuff. Like I really don't cry very frequently. In fact, sometimes these days I feel a little bit almost cold to, I mean, I still have like a visceral reaction to something, but I don't cry anymore really. And then we'll be like watching fucking like Gladiator, or like we watched Florence Foster Jenkins. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, but I know what it is about.
Florence Foster Jenkins was for those of you that don't know, was a New York City like debutante, I guess, like someone who was very wealthy, who had inherited a bunch of wealth, and she wanted to be an opera singer, and she didn't want anybody to ever say no. And she was a big supporter of the arts and created like the Verdi Foundation or what have you, and basically like an arts organization. And she eventually like sort of paid her way into singing at Carnegie Hall, which is one of the biggest stages in the world for art song and for like recitals. But she was a absolutely like 1000% atrociously terrible. I mean, I'm talking horrible, next level, like out of tune singer. And it's weird because she recorded records and she, lived a life where essentially she was delusional. But in this particular movie, it highlighted her intrinsic character traits and her struggle. Unfortunately, like, she married when she was like 14 to like a 20-something-year-old, and the man had syphilis, and so she was given the gift of syphilis on her wedding night, according to the movie, and so she lived a life of a lot of not being able to do a lot of things that she would have wanted to do, and then in the end, of course, and I don't know if this happened or not, but like, she does the performance and then she gets really sick and then she passes from the syphilis, of course. When I tell you that, like, both that and Gladiator, like, I got done with those movies and I like wept for 30 minutes. Like, I'm talking like, not like, oh my God, this is like ugly, like vicious cry, like to the point where I was hyperventilating. Like, it's interesting how that's where I am. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very, very little things can like really trigger me anymore. But like the first year that my dad had passed, it was like anything. So it's been interesting for me to experience this music with you, who's a person who's like very emotional, and like, it's a beautiful thing to cry, I think. And I really learned to embrace it. And my dad even was like, my mom would be like, don't cry in front of him. And my dad would be like, no, I want you to. Like, it's such a beautiful human thing for us to have. Okay, this one's weird. So I don't know this. This is called Wail of the Void from Final Fantasy XI. Was that emotional even? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I felt about that piece. How did you feel about that?
That one didn't grab onto any of my kind of like sad crying emotions, but I did feel a connection to it. The parts that I liked the best, I actually really liked the beginning the best. And I didn't love the transition from the beginning to the first first walk into that piano theme. I found the piano theme to be very pedantic because it was very like on the beat, on the note, which I feel like was a little bit, I don't know, it felt like it was competing with what it established in the beginning. What I loved about the way that it established things in the beginning was there were elements of things being only a half step away from each other. So you've got this dissonance. But what I found that was really interesting is that the dissonance resolved in a way that I wasn't expecting. Mm-hmm. So if you are like hanging on to like the 7th and like 8th of the octave, I don't know, I'm not a chord person, but like T and Do at the same time, and then you expect it to resolve closer to like the chord structure of Do, but then it doesn't, like that leaves you feeling like, ooh, like what's coming. But then it moved into this very, I don't know, kind of almost sounded like just very plunky piano, which was simplistic. But then when it moved into some of the more like cinematic or theatrical like positioning, I liked that a lot better. There was a lot going on in this piece. A very interesting musically, for sure, an interesting journey, but I could not decide for myself what I thought might be happening in this scene, and I didn't feel a particularly strong emotional connection to this one.
I felt like there were multiple different ideas that were sort of spread across 5 different, like it didn't feel like a cohesive piece, because at one point you had a string melody that I thought the string melody was quite beautiful. Yeah,
there was also one part I like looked at the video so that I could come back to the timestamp. It was in the 3:20 area. Hang on. Yeah, that part where like the violin, that da 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 da, that where you've got kind of like multiple violins playing within like a third of each other, so you've got like a really like nice harmony, a third or a fourth. That theme I really liked too. But again, to your point, it almost felt like across this 4 minutes and 58 seconds of music, it felt like there were very distinct, what do I want to say? Like very distinct acts almost. Or sections. You had like this beginning section, then we moved into the piano section, we had this other section, then we have this like strings are singing kind of in a call and response kind of way, coming back to the piano, coming to the end. And I didn't feel the flowing connection between all of them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's how I felt too. It was hard to latch onto, even though wanting to, but not really being able to find.
Yeah, I think this is an example where I enjoyed the individual pieces of the song more than the sum of its parts.
The song itself, yeah. Let's check out This Silence Is Mine. This is from a game called Drakengard 3, I believe. Apparently this woman, I don't know if this is actually true, but this person who was singing had some sort of throat issue. I don't know if this is true or not. Chihiro Onitsuka had suffered a lot in her life before this was released, and you feel it in every note. I don't know. I don't really understand this. Maybe someone in the comments who has any clue that would be great. Quite the journey there, huh?
Yeah, another really interesting piece of music. This one did not make me emotional, but I definitely felt the journey. The vocalist's vocal texture, whether that is their actual vocal texture or result of, vocal nodules or damage or whatever. Yeah. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the vocal stylings of Daphne Rubin Vega, who's in the original cast of Rent. The musical, her voice has she played the original Mimi. Her voice has just like a natural grit and texture that is instantly recognizable, second to none. Not everyone's cup of tea, but like when she does what she does well, it's so unbelievably like remarkable and impactful. And I kind of felt similarly about this vocalist, that like their voice in this state would not be everyone's choice for everything, but like the moment when like that texture that I feel like can communicate pain and longing and desire in almost like an earthy, guttural way, like that it's coming from like the depths of inside, like from your intestines, like it's coming from deep inside. Again, having zero context, felt to me like someone who has worked really, really hard at something or has journeyed very long to get somewhere, has been on some sort of point A to point B adventure, journey, quest, task, and they've come to the end of it and they've earned the ability to stop. They've earned the ability to rest. They've earned the ability to quit. And like, that's how I'm interpreting the end of like The Silence Is Mine. Like I've done everything. I've done everything that you asked me to do. I've done everything I was supposed to do. I've fulfilled my familial obligation, like choose from list of 10 like options. And now it has come to this being its natural conclusion. But I found the vocal very haunting, whether that is due to the potential vocal damage of the person singing or had something happen to their voice, or if that's just like the natural timbre of their voice, that it comes with texture and grit or whatever. I found it very haunting and very listenable, like the desire to like continue to hear what they had to say. I was very compelled to listen for their next line.
It's interesting how some pieces that are 6 minutes or 7 minutes, like this was 7 and a change, like it doesn't, time seems to stand still when you listen to these pieces. It's interesting to how, well, first of all, I think you're pretty accurate. I don't know Drakengard 3, but as far as I know, that is accurate, what you just described. I think a couple really interesting things are the way it starts and whatever vocal quality that is, like this haunted feeling that you describe, it does feel like tired. And then the middle section where we pick up in tempo, of course, is like saying like, what else do you want from me? Like, I've done everything I possibly could. What more can I possibly give you? And then in the end, it's like, I'm done. And when she whispers, "This silence is mine." Like I do agree with you that it's like this feeling of like, I'm ready to stop. Like this is too much for me. And so while it may not be like tear jerky emotional, it is certainly, again, and I think this has been a common thread in the last 6 or so, 7 songs we listen to, is like the sense of visceralness that comes from these tracks is really apparent, and this feeling of brokenness or being, or, trying to make amends or what have you. It's these very human and raw feelings. In the same vein is this track is called Emil, Emil's Sacrifice. It's from NieR, Gestalt.
This is an interesting one. The eighth note, kind of like almost arpeggio, playing in the cello. I'm a sucker for strings, no question. So I found that part of the theme, the movement, dun 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 dun, that with the chords, the chords progressing on a chromatic scale, like the shoo. I found that more emotional than the singing. The vocal on this one, in my mind, like clicked into this idea of like a prepubescent altar boy chorister in like a Catholic church in England, because the melody of the vocalist was quite simplistic, and it had almost a I'm raised / recovering Catholic over here. It had almost like a Catholic basic hymn kind of quality to it.
Yeah.
And like there were always, there's two different kinds of hymns in church. They're the ones that are rooted in like the old music that are like derivatives of Bach, Mozart, and all of that stuff, and like are really basic. And then there are ones that are like the new hippie music that my mom and dad would always complain about, where it felt like it was more an extension of like guitar and pop music or whatever. This for me felt more like that kind of traditional classical sound, especially with like that very light soprano, or like in my mind, like almost like the male soprano, just kind of like popping along. I didn't feel particularly emotionally connected to this, but like this one, more than anything we've listened to so far, I was like, I like really want to know what's going on. Because I think the music did not do a great job for me personally of like setting a scene. Like this one, out of everything we've listened to, felt the most maybe ambient, which isn't necessarily, I don't mean that as an insult, but that the music itself did not have enough brushstrokes of story for me to create it for myself. That's how I'm feeling.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, for me, the boy soprano kind of gives me the sound of innocence and the sound of like hope and possibility. I agree with you that the ostinato, or the arpeggiation in the cello and the strings, especially with the shifting tides there, is really, really languishing, and it does have a quality of like just lilting, essentially, like slowly dying. Right. I think it's interesting the conclusions you came to, especially when you were referring to the Catholic, the old school, new school way of playing and creating soundscapes, because it does certainly feel classically rooted. It feels very rooted in like, very buttoned up and in a measured sort of sadness, but I do think that connects to the character. So there is a little bit of a blurring there that is a little bit complicated. But yeah, I mean, I hear everything you're saying. It's so interesting too, because this is a fairly emotional piece, especially in context. And that's one of those instances too where I think it's worth bringing up that these tracks are meant to be played in a specific setting, right? But at the same time, I think it's interesting to like experience it in game, and then take it away, and then listen to it again, and then sort of like think about how the in-game experience makes you feel personally. Or now, for instance, if you were ever to sit down and play NieR Gestalt or / Replicant, I feel like you would probably, now that you've heard the piece, I think you would go into it and be like, oh wow, that's the piece that I heard, and then there would be another emotional tether there. So it's interesting how music, no matter where we hear it, whether it's in-game first or out of context first or whatever, there's always tethers that are being created, whether or not we realize it or not. These emotional syntax, this emotional relationship to them, and I find that quite, I don't know, quite mesmerizing, that music is able to transcend but also enhance both where it's its main purpose, but also like create a purpose around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
and music, it leaves breadcrumbs for you, and like this becomes the question of whether or not you are paying attention to be able to recall it. But like, as an example, that arpeggiated beginning with like the kind of haunting chords that come in and retreat, that immediately sent me to a memory of, and again, I'm dating myself as a geriatric millennial here, that immediately sent me to a memory of the movie Center Stage. If you have not, please enjoy. It is a movie about ballet dancers trying their very best to make the fictitious American ballet whatever ensemble. Early performances from Zoe Saldana, if you love her in all the things that she's been in Avatar and everything else. Did you know that she is a ballerina and can dance on point? She's in this movie. There is a section where Peter Gallagher, who is our enemy and our antagonist in this movie, a ballet that he has choreographed, there's this entrance part where like the male dancer is entering looking for the female dancer, his partner, and he has to walk through, and the other ballet dancers that are in the core are kind of like being lifted up in front of him, and he's clearing them, and then he eventually gets to his love, the female dancer who we discover. There's one scene early in the movie where a dancer, not Zoe Saldana, is doing this, a dancer named Maureen in the movie. And Peter Gallagher is like, Maureen, you make it look like work. And it's this part where it's supposed to feel like very like light and floaty and whatever. And that, it's funny how the music in that piece, which I'm sure is some like classical famous piece that I'm not knowing the name of right now, but there is that same similar like chord pull back. Chord pull back. I've seen that movie probably, I don't know, 10, 15 times. And I could not pull that song out of a lineup. But like the fact that that movie and that song in the movie, that scene in that movie left breadcrumbs for me that are strong enough for me to immediately make that connection upon hearing the beginning of this song. Right? And there's no relation between them that I'm aware of. But it was a strong enough musical or sense memory that I was like, oh, this reminds me of that song in that scene in this movie that I have not seen in recent memory. So
yeah,
music be powerful, yo.
Yeah, music be powerful. It's true. I mean, and that's really the thing that I just keep thinking about is that like there's so much versatility in music. I mean, composers are geniuses at being able to like produce emotional pieces that like will hopefully resonate with people and tap into something and then it sort of release it as they like do it, you know what I mean? It's really interesting.
And now half of your viewers and listeners will be so delighted that they've been advised to watch the movie Center Stage, and the other
now
half
I want
are
to
going
watch
to be
Center Stage.
so disappointed that they chose to watch that movie.
Oh no.
It's a polarizing film, folks.
Is it?
It's best if you suspend disbelief. That was one of those movies that I think I would have seen probably in high school or college, probably it's close to the late 90s, early 2000s. And I would cite that as one of those movies that just like abjectly lied to me about what it is like to live in New York City.
Oh, it's one of those with the giant. Yeah.
So
with a giant Friends apartment.
Yeah, exactly. Just add it to the list.
That was Mr. Deeds for me. There's no way that Adam Sandler had that giant apartment. Anyway, let's listen to Don't Ever Forget from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky.
I have never seen one episode or movie of Pokemon. So
really?
Yes, I have tangential knowledge.
Of course.
But no, I have never watched a full episode. So this one lacked just feeling in general for me, and I would say that maybe for me it came from how kind of measured and beat perfect everything felt. It was quite rigorous in how it stayed with its meter.
Yeah, it definitely stayed within its measure. Yeah.
I also felt that the chord progressions of the theme became a little predictable. Dun, da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, da. Like, I just felt like I knew where it was going. I think when that happens for me, not that a theme can't, repeat and still be powerful, but it just didn't take me someplace I wasn't expecting. This is a short piece. This is only 2 minutes and 32 seconds.
Yeah.
I was kind of waiting I felt like I was waiting for something to happen. I was waiting for some sort of story point or transition point. First of all, it's a beautiful piece of music. I really enjoyed listening to it, and I enjoyed the musical story that it had to tell. But from an emotional standpoint, it didn't check those boxes for me, and it didn't click into anything for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I had a different perspective, because what I agree with you is that I wanted more, whether it was longer or because I wanted some variation. Can't say, but I certainly I felt that it was very gentle and very sweet and very loving, and there was this feeling for me that melody was so beautiful because it felt very like, I've got you, this is okay, you're gonna be all right, and that comforting sound to me is one that I think, again, in a post dad world, that sound feels very comforting and very safe for me personally. So I actually liked that it was repetitive, and I liked that I felt like a sort of predictability, because the melody itself was so pleasant. Though I agree with you that it was, I think due to the hardware and things, that it did have a measured quality to it, because that's just, it's hard to, and the fact that it was just sort of nonstop repetition, basically, of essentially what felt like a maybe 16 to 30 bar phrase. I'm not sure how many phrases it was, or how many measures. It's crazy how someone can feel one way and another person can feel another. It's so interesting. I don't wonder why that is. I wonder what makes taste.
I mean, I don't have a simple answer for your question. What makes taste?
You don't have an answer for that.
But it does have to be shaped by your experiences, your preferences. As an example, anything that has an oboe or an English horn will send me. There's just something about the sound that instrument makes that immediately equates to some level of pain, longing, wanting, haunting, and I have a very emotional, visceral memory of a piece of music that a director selected when I was in my collegiate production of Our Town, everybody's favorite Thornton Wilder play. And he selected this piece of music to kind of be the thing that starts playing as the lights go down. And he went for a very slow descend on the stage lights before encouraging the audience to applaud at the end of the show. And that was the fall of 2002. So we're talking 23 years ago. And I still feel that music and that theme in my bones from the first time I heard it when I was on stage as a performer. I don't want to say I was having a religious experience, because that's just obnoxious college student. But it was it felt real to me. It felt real. Hey, I'm doing the thing that I've trained my entire life to do, and I'm doing it at a high level. And here I am, and I hear this music. But since then, that song was very heavy on an English horn, kind of taking the lead of the theme. So now English horns just connect to me, and that is 100% affecting my taste and my preferences. But it comes from this body of experiences that I've had. I grew up playing stringed instruments, so I have a stronger emotional reaction to string instruments than I think maybe your average bear. My grandfather, who has now passed away, was a professional trumpet player. So if there's a song that has a very strong, emotional, longing, kind of sad trumpet part, ooh, baby, don't even get me started on some of the buskers in New York City that would be like playing just a trumpet in a subway stop. Like I'd be
Oh,
sobbing
no.
on the trains, folks. Sobbing on the trains. But yeah, I think that's a part of your taste. Like it doesn't even take into account like the kinds of things that you like or wish to do or genres. Like it doesn't it's so much more visceral and deep than that. But like part
Yeah.
of your taste is formed by things that you liked before, even if you don't remember like liking something, but the fact that you took just, it's again the breadcrumbs, like you took just that one little piece with you and like brought it forward for yourself to the next thing.
Oh, I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, like, I hear so much music now and so much good music at that. And it's hard because I have had to try to figure out what are my likes and dislikes, because I can't possibly like everything, even though I enjoy most everything. And it's like, well, what do I truly attach myself to? And it's weird because as a child, I pretty much exclusively listened to like music from Final Fantasy and was exposed to, soundscapes around the piano and guitar and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting phenomenon to connect the dots and find what roots you as a person, and musically speaking, what you connect to as well. This is so hard because there are so many options. We can't go through 40 years, but there's like stuff from Halo Reach. There's stuff from Genshin Impact, Fire Emblem, Okami, and Final Fantasy X that I want to play, and I'm having a hard time picking which one I want you to hear next.
Well, can you pick one? Like we've definitely already had two that made me cry after in sharing my like emotional connection to it. Can you pick one that you think will get a tear to roll while the music is still playing?
Well, you know what? The Fire Emblem song is literally titled ... So I kind of just want to play it just for the sheer sake of what the hell. Like I kind of want to know. So let's just do that one. This one's from Fire Emblem Awakening, and it's literally titled 5 dots. So 3 ellipses essentially. Yeah, let's hear it. Maybe I'll cry too. Shit, I don't know. I didn't know what we were going to get with that one. What did you think of that?
That one is definitely very emotional. Without knowing anything about the context, to me, if I had to like summarize what that song is about, that song feels to me like what it feels like to love someone who's far away. Either they're not physically close to you, or maybe you've lost them and they're no longer part of this mortal coil existence, that kind of thing. But there was just an inherent longing in this one that never resolved. So this one stayed in that one kind of place. We didn't feel like on this journey we were gaining any ground or making any progress. Like we never got the opportunity to resolve from this kind of like haunting, wanting feeling. But this one tugged at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and I think some of that comes from the leaps in the upper register especially. I think some of it comes with like being in the middle of the piano too. That sound quality is really, the higher you go on the piano, the either the more childish or the more tear-jerking it sounds. There's such a sense of loss in this to me, in a sense of loneliness, in a sense of like really being like displaced. And you're right, I do think that, gosh, I mean, the idea of being separated from someone, that also comes through really, really abundantly. It feels just like broken in a way, right? Like there's no real chorus, just the piano. It doesn't really come together. Let's listen to a piece called Final Duet from Omori. Oof, like a no, man.
That's beautiful. That reminded me a little bit of God. What came first to my mind was the montage in the movie Ratatouille when the critic tastes the rat's ratatouille, takes his first bite, and he's like immediately transported to his like boyhood, and he has all of these memories of like his mom like making him ratatouille, and like the taste of it like takes him back. That is what this song did for me. It made me feel like those moments where you encounter something in your life, you taste something, you smell something, you hear something, and it just like there's this moment where it just like the wind, it's almost like the wind goes backwards and like just like sucks you into this like beautiful feeling where you felt different and the world was perfect, and you've got these beautiful quarter notes that are moving like bum, 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 which has like a very simplistic and childlike nature to it. But then you've got the violin kind of doing its best sad song singing, telling a story that overlays with that to let you know that the things that were good and fine and simple then are different now. So you've still got this juxtaposition of this memory, which I feel like is happening in the quarter notes, juxtaposing with like reality, which is happening in the violin. And there's an inherent tension between those two of you want it to be what it was, but like you can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste container, right?
Yeah.
So you're here. That's my that's what it did for me.
It made me think of Up, the montage.
Yes.
It made me think of like growing, and as we're filming this, and my birthday's in 2 days, and so like getting older and thinking about life and just the like, I don't know, especially with a partner.
Yes.
Really felt like watching, like falling in love, being in love, wanting to, protect your partner and so on and so forth, and then you suddenly look up and you're 67 or 50, 70 or whatever, and 80. I had a really dear friend who said everyone has something about their life that would make you cry, and that's something I think about a lot. It's never left my mind, that idea that life is, I don't know, it felt very like exposed and very like, you're right, the dance between the piano and the violin, it was almost like two lives intertwining, and there's clearly some context there that is death involved, I think, but it's it was very somber, and I think a perfect song to end. What do you think? What do you make of all that? I mean, you haven't touched a video game or listened to a video game soundtrack in years, so like, what's it like to hear all this? And especially since it's one specific type, but
it's just like a great reminder that there is such beautiful artistry happening in so many different corners of so many different industries. I think that, number one. I think number two, music is universal. Music is a language that transcends application. Some of these things that we listen to, you could have played them for me in isolation and not told me what it was. And I could have easily said, this is an overture for orchestra that was written between, 1890 to 1960 or something. And it is valid and belongs and could stand next to any of the things that are held up in higher esteem by culture, for whatever reason, for whatever.
I didn't tell you to say that. That's you.
Yeah. Held up.
That's exactly what I've said.
Yeah. Held up in higher esteem. The diversity obviously is really interesting. They all have in common the fact that they are a video game, but the execution of how the music communicates is all different. There are so many beautiful bits and pieces that can stand alone and have a life of their own, but it does make me wonder, how much more beautiful or powerful or different I would feel having taken the journey that these games invite you to go on. Multiple journeys, multiple paths, right? Where you become invested in some way, invested in the journey, invested in the playing, invested in the characters, and how that then affects and colors your interpretation or invites your emotions to come forward because of that deeper connection that you have with the property itself, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and I think context is sort of inescapable. And for a long time, I was sort of like, well, you can listen to this, you don't need context. And I'm like, well, that's, as I've evolved, I've also been like, you know what, that's not true. I mean, I think context is a beautiful thing, and they're written for a specific thing. And it's not to say that they can't be enjoyed out of it, and they should be enjoyed out of it. And you should create your own interpretations and your own feelings about how a music piece makes you feel. But I think also connecting it to the context is a very healthy and normal thing to do. But listening to it in a vacuum, I think also has many benefits, as we've seen today. I mean, they're clearly emotional pieces. And I just, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm glad that we made it work somehow, even though you didn't necessarily. The thing is, there's always more. I mean, we didn't play the Halo Reach song. We didn't play the To the Moon song. We didn't play Final Fantasy X. I mean, like, there's so many things there's so many games that, I mean, we're talking like 45, 40 years of history here, and like, it's only in the last like probably 20 years where things have really, well, I shouldn't say that. Probably in the last 30 years. Sorry, probably, yeah, I would say 37 years, let's say, as long as I've been alive, that have been emotional and stuff. There's more. There's so much more. So thanks for coming on, Maria. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
And of course, everybody, hopefully you had a good time, you masochists. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you stay tuned, if you like this theme thing, let me know, because we'll keep doing it. And as always, yeah, thanks a ton, everybody. And we'll see you later. Bye. See you, everybody.